I love that supplication at the end of the reading. It's always useful. That was Vic Dakara, ladies and gentlemen. Truly a genius when it comes to these nakshatras and their sutras and defining them. Now we have one more reading left. It's a long video today, because I know that this next bit is also a long one. Next up, we are going to read about Svati, the Svati native, one more time. Vayu being Indra's charioteer. Now, I've been doing a series where I talk about each of the deities of the nakshatras. The deities of the nakshatras, in particular Vayu, they all have their stories in the Vedas. And that video is available here on my YouTube channel. I'm going to produce it as a second video. So you can probably watch it. I'm probably going to put I'm getting used to how to do YouTube. You can check it out in this video here, and we'll do that at the very end when we do our end screen. So for now, we have one more reading, and this is about the native of the Svati Nakshatra. And this is going to come from another book. It's The Divine Forces of the Lunar Nakshatras as Portrayed in the Vedas, by an author who goes by the name of Radhe. She's great. She's a wonderful researcher. She really, when she goes through her research on the deity throughout the Vedas, she talks about Vayu in the Vedas from various different parts of it. And she says which book, which Veda each one comes from. It's very useful information. I highly recommend the book for that sake. I always like to say, though, let's keep in mind the caveat that she is a traditional Indian astrologer, which means her writing is subject to some of the distortion that we've described, where much of her idea of the nakshatra comes from the notion that Svati falls into Libra, and that Libra has something to do with the airy quality of Svati, which is not the case. Because Libra was written, the idea of Libra came 1500 years after the Nakshatra Sutras were written of the Taittiriya Brahmana. So the Vayu of the essential nakshatra is something different from the air of Libra. Especially because in today's time, Svati actually falls into Scorpio. So this author, we have to keep that in mind when we read her writing. But I always like to include her writing because the Indian people are the only ones who have information on these nakshatras. So hearing the take of someone who's been dealing with Svati Nakshatra, their tradition has been dealing with it for 2,000 years or more. So it's useful to hear their take on it. We just have to make sure in our minds to remember to separate the wheat from the chaff in this way. Let's be discerning as we take on the reading of a traditional Indian writer as to the nature of the Svati Nakshatra native. Right? So let's dig in. This is the Svati native. We read, Nistya, outcast. It's this word that we see down here. I'm going to take this off now because we don't really need it. Nistya, which means outcast or strewn away, carried away. Nistya is the ancient appellation for Svati. It indicates the remote placement of this nakshatra from the ecliptic, as Vic Dakara noted. The actual star that represents Svati is far away from what we would call the solar ecliptic. Nistya also suggests, as does the antelope, which is Vayu's vehicle in the Purana texts, that there's a solitary nature in the native, whose preference for seclusion often results in a sense of not belonging. to anywhere, to anyone, to anything. At times, the native's need for aloneness may turn into an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Now, many attributes of the native. I just want to try one thing. Looking at my camera here. I'm going to try that. Many attributes of the Svati native are directly derived from the inherent nature of Vayu, which is a devata who represents the air tattva, the element of air or wind. So the Svati native has a compelling need for movement, speed, and change. This explains Svati's restless and possibly impulsive temperament. Now, the author Radhe gives us some cool little examples here. You can look to the bhava placement or the bhava rulership of the Svati planet to see where such attributes manifest in life. For example, if it's the second bhava bhavesha, then this person will speak with great rapidity or they'll eat hastily, right? So let's say, for example, just to show you guys what we're talking about here, what do we mean by bhavesha? Let me see. Present, share screen. I gotta get used to using my technology here still. Come on, show me the thing. Okay, this is here. Oh, come on, why aren't you giving it to me? I just gotta see if this is gonna give me what I want here. It's not. You'll have to excuse me for a moment, folks. Okay. Present, share screen, Windows. Yeah, that's the one. So you guys should see me now. Great. Thanks for your patience here, folks. So this is Aries rising, just to show an example. Let's say the second bhavesha. So the bhava means house. So bhavesha means house lord. So when we read, our author Radhe says, if the second bhava bhavesha falls into Svati, then the person speaks with great rapidness and or will eat hastily. So if you have an Aries rising and Venus is in Svati, the second house kind of relates. Venus is channeling the second house. And the second house relates with eating and as well as speaking. So they might eat or speak very quickly. Now, we already gave this example. If the fifth lord falls into Svati, let's say if it's an Aries rising and the sun falls into Svati, then the person speaks with great If the fifth lord falls into Svati, in the case of Aries, this would be the sun. If the sun for an Aries rising falls into Svati, then the mind is quick, but it's also very changeable. There's an intelligence and a discernment that is quick but changeable. Now, if the third bhava bhavesha, in this case for Aries rising, we would see that Mercury rules Gemini, which is the third house. So we have Aries rising and Mercury falls into Svati. Then perhaps the native engages in sports or creative activities that require a fleetness of hands, a real quickness, a quick observation of things moving. It's not so much like football, but more like this would be like ping pong or quick mind games where you need to be very have to have the quick visual acuity and a quick mind to change things up. You know, maybe charades would be a good example. It's just me thinking on the top of my head. Right? But those are some examples of some of those falling into Svati. It's cool that the author gives these ideas, you know. Now, Vayu's modus operandi is perpetual motion and travel. And the native cherishes the ability to move about in the world in whatever direction the wind takes them. Again, when we say the native, I should have mentioned this from the beginning, in Vedic astrology, it's if your moon or your rising sign fall into Svati, that's most essentially what we mean when we're talking about the Svati native. If the moon or the rising sign are falling into this nakshatra, then you will really see the character quality of this nakshatra coming through in that native. Right? So this is somebody for whom the ability to move about in the world in whichever direction the wind takes them is very important. An intuitive personality can come through here, where they just don't feel satisfied until they've found something that nestles into their roots that is perfect in a way, although they'll never find that perfection. But the least imperfect is what Svati is ultimately looking for. Now, at the root of this desire to move about by the wind, the root of this is a love of freedom. Anything that suggests permanency or requires the establishment of deep roots is likely to be met with resistance from the Svati native. Perhaps for this reason, Svati's symbol is a small little shoot with very shallow roots. The young shoot, swaying with the movement of the wind, also represents this native's ability to remain flexible and adaptable, to go with the flow. The native is likely an expert at adjusting to frequent changes in life. Indeed, his own development and growth depend on his ability to thrive in environments that are constantly evolving. So they're expert at adjusting to frequent changes, and they depend on this wind, on this change, on mixing things up. This makes the native particularly knowledgeable and skilled in the area of transition management. So perhaps this person consults organizations on the issue of transition management. Alternatively, see, like that's a good career for the Svati person. And alternatively, the native may be a life coach who assists individuals through periods of great change and uncertainty. As well as a small shoot in the ground whose growth is hampered by the ever-shifting wind. Svati is also symbolized by a flag blowing in the wind. So Svati and its native is at times figured as the wavering shoot, the little plant, or a waving flag. Yet Svati also represents the powerful force behind their movement. Yeah, I see what it's saying, and it's going to talk about, I remember I've read this already. They're kind of like a espionage person, or they could be a political speaker who speaks about overarching looming changes that are coming. Just like a flag is blowing in the wind, we know, oh, there's a storm coming. In the same way, Svati can represent the powerful force behind the movement of something. And Svati will speak to it. They put their ear to the ground and see, oh, there's a stampede coming that way. That kind of thing. Now, the Lord Vayu is called Ishanam, the most powerful. It's a daunting and destructive atmospheric power. Vayu is also likened to the sharp horn of a bull, and his razor-like power is easily felt by others. So don't be fooled by this native. There's an indomitable force hidden behind its apparently otherwise detached demeanor. A flag waving violently in the air alerts others to powerful forces. Is the moon? Oh my gosh. Thank you, Thriller Kid. Is it really? Wow. And today, the Thriller Kid has mentioned to us that the moon is in Svati right now. That is amazing. That's sick. If that, I don't know if that's the case, but if it is, amazing. What an amazing time to be reading about Svati. Thank you, Thriller Kid. So, a flag waving violently in the air alerts others to powerful forces not readily perceived from a distance. Similarly, the native of Svati may serve as an informant for the government or as some kind of an undercover agent. Now, our author gives us an example. We see this aspect of Svati is profiled in the life of a person named Julian Assange. Assange was the founder of WikiLeaks. And this person had their moon in Svati. So they are the true native of Svati. Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, made a career in distributing information advertently withheld from the public. Determined to expose the wrongdoings of governments and corporations, this Svati native, Julian Assange, is dubbed the whistleblower. Assange's early childhood is indicative of the shifting and changing nature of Svati. He's said to have lived a nomadic life. He and his mother moved from one town to another, attempting to escape the notice of an ex-husband. Later, this founder of WikiLeaks relentlessly traveled throughout the world to set up an important infrastructure for his company. Today, Assange has taken refuge in a single room at the Embassy of Ecuador in London. Although in the midst of a major metropolitan center, he is isolated from the rest of the world. That individuating factor. Very interesting. So I do love this author. You know, she's got some great ideas about each nakshatra, you know. What's nice is that she mentions what the root of her argument comes from. She doesn't say because Libra, you know, she says because Vayu being the god of wind. This is where all her intimations are coming from. Here we read, Vayu is also known as Vata in the Rig Veda. Now, this is important for the health of the person in Svati. Vayu, or Vata, being composed of the air element. Vata is one of the 3 Ayurvedic doshas, which can mean imbalance. So on the mental level, the versatility of Vata expresses itself through an endless flow of creative ideas and thoughts. It gives clarity, alertness, an imaginative mind, freshness, and spontaneity. Interestingly, our author gives an example of Robin Williams, who had the rising sign in Svati. Robin Williams was Svati Lagna. He displayed these attributes. Robin Williams was known for his expert improvisations, and his sense of humor was as clever as it was spontaneous. You know, he is so Svati. I'm glad that this example is here. You know, there's funny things. In the Disney movie Aladdin, they wanted to have Robin Williams play the genie. So Robin Williams is a spontaneity guy. He's not just bringing stuff up from inside of his mind. He's also looking with a great acuity at the things all around him. So the creators of Aladdin brought Robin Williams in and said, okay, so you're this genie. We want to animate you looking at a bunch of possessions and precious little items and wares. So what they did is they brought Robin Williams into a room where he's got little genie lamps, little items, little beads, little metallic cups and jars and clay jars and all these different things. And Robin Williams comes in and just improvises. He improvises. Oh, this thing. Oh, God, I wish I could bring up a clip or something like that from that scene in Aladdin where it's the genie. Is look at all these amazing things here. Look at all these things. Oh, this thing here could do this. Oh, look, wow, this thing could do this thing, can't it? Oh, this thing is one of these. And he does all these silly things that are spontaneous and amazing, like so talented and so clever. And he's thinking of ideas that come from the things in front of him. That's the beauty of this, that's the beauty of the character of Svati, of this Vata energy, right? Although Vata can be exaggerated, it really makes you think of whether this energy of Robin Williams with his drug habit of getting into, I think he got into cocaine, got into a bunch of things that really messed him up, makes you wonder if Vata was ungrounding, gave him a lack of grounding. Because what I said from the beginning, Svati people, Vata people, need kapha, which is the grounding earth and water dosha. So it's something to keep in mind. If you find yourself having an ADHD energy that can't be stopped, and you're a Svati native, really consider Ayurveda. Start eating some ghee. I'm too much Vata in my energy field. I've been eating ghee with everything, and it's done a lot for grounding me. So keep that in mind. So here we go. Students and practitioners of Ayurveda are intimately familiar with the term deranged Vata. A deranged or vitiated Vata is a condition that's induced by excessive movement, be it perpetual travel, nonstop texting on your phone, excessive talking, etc. Too much going on in the nervous system. The restless nature of the Svati native can easily diffuse and scatter the Vata dosha. Under such conditions, the nervous system becomes overly stressed, and symptoms like tremors, breathlessness, and heart palpitations may manifest. On the mental emotional level, you can expect symptoms associated with forgetfulness, insomnia, anxiety, insecurity, and instability to manifest on the part of the native. So we have our friend April Durham here. Thank you, April. Thank you for chiming in. April has their moon in this nakshatra. And I'm very glad for you to be sharing that you can relate to what we're talking about here. So, too much movement and too little grounding can cause the Svati native to struggle with materializing their ideas or completing their many projects. And this even brings us a little bit back to our sutra, where we've seen that asiddhir, incompletion, can be the avastat, which can be to the detriment of the native if this goes too far. Impulsiveness replaces well thought out plans, and aimless wandering negates a healthy sense of constancy. This is especially true if a changeable planet like the moon occupies Svati. So the moon's already changeable, being put in this changeable nakshatra, plus the moon is debilitated in Scorpio in today's time, really shows a whole lot of capacity for aggravation of Vata inside of a moon in Svati person. It's very, very much something to keep in mind here. Now, again, just as Vic mentioned, the sun is the graha of steadfastness and consistency. So when the sun is in Svati, it may be like that little shoot, that little plant shoot, whose roots are too shallow to support independent growth and strength. So in this case, the person might bend to the needs and demands of others rather than firmly standing true in its own self. Now, the last mention that needs to be made here is that when you read this video, if you were to watch this video that we're going to be putting up soon at the end screen, we're going to learn about how Vayu's role in the Vedas and Puranas was as the chief charioteer amongst the gods. As a master charioteer, a driver, Vayu is expert in leveraging the winds, his team of horses, so that they speed him along his way rather than impeding his progress or blowing him off course. This is somebody who learns the drift of the car in front of you. You get into the drift and it can allow you to go farther. Indeed, the success Svati has to offer is contingent on the native keeping his destination point, his goals, his aspirations, and his objectives firmly in mind, and employing their creative flow of ideas to direct and steady their course rather than diffuse or divert it. Wow, I love that way this is conveyed. The winds can be these different ideas that can blow you off course, but if you let it carve into your overall destination, the winds of these new ideas and transforming ways of thinking about it can actually make you carve even deeper into the single pointed goal that you have, if you allow that to be the case. And don't allow it to diffuse your overall goal. Importantly, Vayu's function as a charioteer of 1,000 horse-drawn chariot suggests the ability of this native to command or administer a dynamic and powerful organization. However, that elevated position is likely to be subordinate to the president or CEO, for Vayu's main purpose as a charioteer is to deliver Indra, the monarch, the CEO of the heavens, to the sacrificial grounds, to the place where the CEO, the boss, the bigger boss, is intending to go. So Svati might find themselves, for how maverick and individuating they are, they might find themselves as the right-hand man of a very powerful person, of Indra, as Indra's charioteer, because they're the one person who will tell Indra, Indra will say, I feel like this wind is going to take us further. If we use the wind from the valley here, I believe that will be to our advantage. Vayu, or Svati, the Svati Nakshatra native will say, no, sir, trust me. That bit of information, I've already dug through it. That data, that idea, that course of action and thought is only going to take us away from our bigger picture, our bottom line that we're trying to do here. Let's stay on track. It's not going to help us. Nice try, but let's keep focused on what we're doing here. So Svati is good as the second-hand man for someone else's thing. Otherwise, the individuation nature of Svati might take them away from some bigger picture, they're acidically, they might melt the container that holds the acid, which means they might be so individuated that they never do anything with it. Svati does better when they are in a group where their acid can be contained by an overall bigger purpose inside the group, right? Very useful. Very wonderful way to look at it. That came from the divine forces of the lunar nakshatras as portrayed in the Vedas. Thank you, Radhe, who's the author.